Okay, welcome to Law and the Occult with Adewonuola, where we discuss law as it intersects with anything the occult. And today I'm really excited because it's my first episode, and with me is Danesh Kumar, who is a psychic holistic healer. Welcome, Dinesh.
Hi,
How
thank
are
you.
you?
I'm happy. I'm happy and I'm excited actually because it is your first episode and I'm looking forward to where this conversation goes.
Yeah, me too. It's something that I kind of just when I met you first in Bangkok, however many weeks ago, I was attending one of your talks on spirituality, and I was just really inspired by a lot of the things that you were saying on stage. And so I thought you would make the perfect guest. For those who don't know who Dinesh is, can we give a brief rundown of, who you are and what it means to be a psychic holistic healer? And then we'll go into the intersection with law.
Well, I've been working for the last 21 years, 22 years as a psychic holistic healer. I
Wow.
help people find their journey. I help them kind of fix anything that's an ailment, be it emotional, physical, or mental within them. I also help predict things that could be happening in the future, or at least give them some sort of breadcrumbs to the future so they can make their way towards it. The 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 psychicness has been there with me for over, I mean, since I've been about 16, since my teens, I guess. But I didn't start using this practice till my late 20s, and I've been helping people around the world in all areas of work, in all areas of lifestyle. I also have done some public speaking over the last 5 years on manifestation, spiritualism, holisticness, and also being a psychic. And I think the other thing is that I kind of have a different perspective to things. I simplify it, and it's really hard for a lot of people to understand why is it so simple, but it is that simple. So a lot of conversations that I do have with people is very therapeutic. It's guidance. It's also a way of, getting a perspective that's probably something that you haven't thought about before. So that's a little background on me. I'm actually from Toronto, Canada. I live between Dubai and Bombay, India. I do events all around the world. I just finished off a couple events in Barcelona and Rome. Prior to that, I had a few events in Singapore, Bangkok. So I've been traveling around the world and just doing my talks and along with meeting people face to face. But if I'm not meeting them face to face, I do it over the phone. I can also just do it over audio. So I'm pretty diverse when it comes to helping people.
With today's conversation, I imagine that this might be one of the first conversations that you have on the topic of spirituality and law. Maybe, maybe not. But certainly, I look forward to kind of bridging that connection. And the way I kind of imagine this show or this podcast series to go is that I kind of bring my background in history as someone who's worked in the legal system in some capacity and as someone who has spent the last 2 years as a trial watcher, just observing jury trials for fun across North America because I'm a nerd like that, and kind of using my third eye to observe jury trials. And that's how I started questioning the difference between what I was seeing physically and what was happening spiritually. And that's kind of how I started getting into law and the occult, because the way I see it is, even though I started off being a trial watcher just out of sheer curiosity, as the years went by, I started realizing, I'm like, oh, the reason I'm attracted to this is because in many respects I find law to be a form of, like, I mean, this is going to sound taboo, but I guess that's what we're here for. But I see law in many ways kind of mimicking like witchcraft, in the sense of, like, I look at the courtroom as like a ritual space, and when you listen to the verbiage of what happens in courtrooms, it very much so mimics witchcraft, in that people are taking oaths and there's a ritual. And today's topic in particular is about an observation I made at some point in time where I was like, are we cursing people in court when judges are handing down multiple life sentences to an individual given reincarnation? So that's what today's topic is about. And so I guess like it would be nice to kind of like start with the basics. So what can you tell us about karma and justice from the perspective of Eastern traditions, and what the difference between karma and justice is in your opinion?
Well, I think the first thing is about karma is a lot of people think we carry karma from multiple lives into this life, and we're kind of clearing that karma or we're living that karma. I believe that karma is something that we create in the now. I don't believe that it's something that we carry from life, lives that we've lived. I believe it's in this life only, and that the karma that we create in this life is what we are kind of either clearing or living. I don't think it's something that is also a punishment, that a lot of people think karma is a punishment. And I don't think karma is a punishment. I think karma is more about living with your own destiny and creating your destiny. So karma doesn't really have any form of, when people say that you're going to be, that's your bad karma or this is part of your karma, to an extent it is, but I think majority of people need to understand that karma has a little less vindictiveness to it. It's more about the way you're living, the way you are doing things, the way you perceive, the way that you take in information and you give out information. It's the way you act. So it has a lot to do with multiple things. Now, justice and karma. I mean, a lot of people believe that this is like retribution, like something's going to happen. If you do something bad, karma's going to get you and justice is going to be served. Right. Yeah, so I believe at some level there is justice that is served, but if you do bad, the outcome could be that you will get the justice from doing the bad. But I can tell you, there have been a lot of people that have just been doing bad, 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 and there's no justice that's happened to them. And then you've got a lot of people that are presumed guilty, and you think they got justice, but justice wasn't served. It was just the idea of justice. So that justice system is almost like being like God, that if
What do you
justice is
mean by
being
that?
served, that it's God also, right? That this is God's choice. This is the choice that has to happen because it was, deliverance
Oh, like
from a
divine
higher
rule.
source. From a higher source, right? It's come from a higher source. So justice equals God's truth. Justice equals what God wants. Does that make sense? Because it's just. But I don't necessarily believe that also, right? There's so many cases that keep on coming up that get tried again, and you find out the individual was tried wrong. And the information that was given was just a narrative that you kind of believe that narrative, and then you come up with the missing pieces and say, yeah, okay, this is what it is. But is it true justice? It isn't true justice. Yeah. Facts make justice happen a lot quicker, but narrative does not make justice happen. Narrative just a story, right? But facts, like if I have physical evidence and physical things that are showing me that this is what the truth is, then that is justice. But when it's a narrative and we presume and we kind of come up and draw this kind of fairy tale ideology of something, and then the person who's listening, be it jury or be it judge, it's their It's what they think to be true, but it isn't what is true, right? Because it's also
Mm.
now that they have to come up with a theory or an ideology of what is the truth. Because a lot of times you don't really have evidence. A lot of times you don't have a clear picture, right? I mean, we keep on seeing it that people are getting they're getting incarcerated because they look the same color as somebody else, or they're the
Mm.
same height, or they were wearing the same jacket. Like, it's not really true evidence, right? So then that justice that they're getting, the problem is we're not looking at what justice that person needs. We're looking at a bigger picture saying, hey, we need to make sure that we find somebody and just put them away and say, hey, okay, we cleared this, let's move to the next thing. So again, you're playing the role of God. That's what I feel, especially when it comes to justice and karma and how maybe justice is served. And
Mhm.
it's very interesting. Sorry, I want to segue into something because
Sure.
I we didn't speak about what we're going to speak about today. So
No.
she's definitely just come up with her questions. But I've been saying this for years, and there's a movie that I really hold deep to my heart, which is called Philadelphia with Denzel Washington and Tom Hanks and Antonio Banderas. It's a very old film, but Denzel Washington plays a lawyer in that film, and it's a court. The film's based on a court hearing. In that, when Denzel is cross-examining anybody, what he says is, "Explain it to me as if I was a 5-year-old." And I've held that with me for so many years, that
Mm.
line. And I also use that when I'm talking to people. I make sure that they could understand it if they were a 5-year-old. So a lot of I wouldn't say that it was legal terminology, but it was a
Right.
character who is a lawyer that really held deep in my soul the way that he was cross-examining and the way he wanted people to explain things. And the idea of explaining it as a 5-year-old came from something that was based on a film that had a lot of legal information in it. I recommend you watching it. Sorry for cutting you off.
No, it's okay. I want to backtrack to something that you said earlier in terms of your interpretation of karma. Your interpretation of karma is relatively, it's something that seems a little different from maybe the interpretations of karma like I've heard before. For those who kind of follow maybe the traditional understanding of karma, what would you say to them in terms of the idea or the question of whether or not sentencing someone in this lifetime can have consequences across multiple lifetimes?
I mean, if a person believes, the thing is, it's also faith, right? If you have faith that that's the way karma works, then that's the way your karma is going to work.
Mm.
I just feel that you need to simplify it. Now, the traditional way of looking at karma, right? If I do something wrong to you, if I stole from you, just in general, if I stole from you,
Yeah.
eventually I will get something stolen back from me to teach me the lesson of how you felt going through that. Does that make sense? So it's again that whatever you've been doing, karma's going to get back at you and you're going to go through the same thing. Or there will be some punishment for your bad doings. And also, if you do good, then you will get a reward for doing good. So if
Mm.
it's bad, you'll get punished. If it's good, you'll get rewarded. That's basically what karma is trying to say. Is that's the way people look at karma. I don't know if you should be looking at life that way, right?
Mm.
Because we could say so many things are bad, right, that we're doing. Maybe you're not a vegetarian and you eat meat. That could be a bad thing, right? Eating meat could be something that you will have karma in too. You're slaughtering an animal and then eating it, and that's not the way it's supposed to be, so you're going to get the karma of that. But would anybody think that way? Yes, a lot of people in this world do think that way. I just feel when we dictate these type of terms and kind of stay within these walls, that we're limiting our experiences and we're limiting our beliefs. I think having a more open belief system and having a little bit more an idea that it can go beyond that, right?
Hmm.
When we're looking at karma, we can't keep on saying that it will go and transcend over multiple lifetimes. If you believe that, then it will happen that way. There are also people within the industry that I work in that will also push that narrative of saying, well, 5 lifetimes ago, you stole a book from the library. And that's why you're living this life right now. I mean, okay, fine. But is that is that the way it is? I don't think so. If
Well,
you
pause there
believe,
for a
if you,
second.
yeah, okay.
Because then, so then what do you say then to people who in their minds there is that is a reality where like in a past life you stole a book and you were punished for it, like because then in my view it calls into question people who are like akashic records readers or people who do astrology and might look to the 12th house for example of for past life karma. So what are your views on that given what you just said?
I mean, my views on that are, again, very different, right? When I look at astrology, I think when I'm born and my astrological chart's made, it's telling me about what the energies are of that moment. Do I have to hold on to that for the rest of my life? Not necessarily, right? The same way that if I told you you stole a book 7 lifetimes ago, if I told you you stole a book 7 lifetimes ago, and right now you are paying that karma right now, that means you are holding baggage. You held baggage for 7 lifetimes, and you're still holding it right now. That means as a human or as a soul, we didn't evolve in those 7 lifetimes. As a
Hmm.
human or as a soul, your soul comes down to learn lessons. It comes down to learn how to experience things. The soul is not here to punish you. The soul is here to experience. So if we say that 7 lifetimes ago you stole a book and now you're paying that karma now, so what happened in those other 7 lives? Did I not go through that karmic shift? Did I not learn my lesson? Did I not go through that? So you're saying you're holding that much for 7 lifetimes. That's a lot of information for you to carry right now in this moment. That means every single thing you did 7 lifetimes ago, forget about the stealing of the book, but anything else, you're still carrying.
Hmm.
Does that not
Well,
feel overwhelming and heavy? It just feels overwhelming and heavy. I mean, as a debate with each other, I think it's good for you to also kind of look at saying, yes, that if the karma is still to be carried forward, when do I end the karmic cycle? Because that means that the next 5 lifetimes that come up also, because I stole the book 7 lifetimes ago, I'm still carrying that karma. Even if I somebody stole a book back from me, does it mean that the karmic thing is equal, that we've just crushed the karma? No. You still stole the book.
well,
You
it's
already did
making me
that.
think of something very interesting now that we're talking about it. Because it almost seems counterintuitive because the way the legal system is set up, specifically the American legal system, actually, is that the idea is that if you are a defendant and you get, caught doing something and you get sentenced to prison, they want you to atone for what you've done. But also at the same time, if, for example, you're someone like a Jeffrey Dahmer, which is a serial killer who entered into the mainstream again recently through a Netflix series. For those who don't know, Jeffrey Dahmer was accused and found guilty of murdering multiple men and boys. Jeffrey Dahmer, as I know it, I believe he was sentenced to 15 consecutive terms of life imprisonment. And, we know the average lifespan is probably not going past maybe like 90 years old, 100 years old. And so it calls into question, why are we handing down multiple consecutive lifetimes, life sentences, when we already know that each individual's human life is already very limited? Because when you juxtapose that with the idea of like, oh, we want you to like, we are sending you to prison because we want you to rehabilitate yourself and like atone for your sins. But it's like, is that really why you sent me to prison? Because how can that coexist with this idea of like sentencing someone to multiple lifetimes? It's almost as if you're telling them, we forgive you, but like we also don't forgive you, and we hope that in any incarnation anytime soon you're going to be someone who's condemned to confinement. Like it's the two things just don't seem to mix very well at all.
So I think when you get multiple life sentences too, right? I think from what I mean, I'm not legal at all, and I don't
Yeah.
have any background in law, which
Yeah.
you do. But you're going to answer this for me is in case it's multiple life sentences, it's just in case you retry that one life sentence, you still have multiple life sentences to go. Suppose I come back and I want to, in the future, something else comes up, right? And it ever gets tried again, that I still have to go through those multiple judgments before I can clear myself. So regardless, I already have four more life sentences to go. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Because yes, you're correct. I can give you five life sentences, but one life sentence is more than enough to clear your one life. That multiple life sentence, the future judge of 2057 is not going to say, hey, you got a life sentence from like, whatever, 3000 and whatever, that you got a life sentence in 2025 and we need to uphold it, right? Nobody's going to uphold it afterwards, right? There's no, I mean, nobody's going to keep those dockets in forever to say that, oh, well, you had multiple life sentences, you got born again, so this has to happen. No, it's not going to happen that. It's just not going to happen that way. So I think that multiple sentencing also, it's multiple cases that happen against you too, right? It's not just one case that you get multiple life sentences in that one case, right? It's multiple things that you committed this, you've done this, you've also done this, you've done that. So you get a life sentence, life sentence, life sentence, life sentence. In all practicality of those life sentences, that first life sentence will probably be enough till I die, right?
Mm-hmm.
The third, the fourth, the fifth one, I'll never have to go through those life sentences. But the reason why I had those life sentences is suppose you, as a lawyer, in 5 years' time say, hey, we got new evidence, and it looks like we can try this case again to clear the person's name, then great. We clear them from this one life sentence, but maybe not the multiple life sentences because we could clear them for this one because that's where the evidence leads, but maybe not on the other ones. It's not that he gets cleared with this one life sentence and says, okay, we cleared you from this one life sentence. That means all the life sentences are clear. From my understanding of when a judgment is made. Now, when we say spiritually, if we look at the future in lifetimes, even if I was tried right now for a case, I don't think the case holds any value in the future me. It will never hold any value in the future me. We would like to believe that right now as human beings and people who are spiritual and holistic and mindful, that we are making an imprint in ourself or in our soul to carry forward to the next lifetime. That decision of that imprint or holding on to that imprint is the soul's decision to carry on to that imprint. Majority of souls, when they come back again, want to experience something new, right?
Hmm.
They don't want to experience the same. They all want to come back and experience something new. What could be similar in the multiple lives that you live is your characteristics. I'm creative, I'm athletic, I'm very mindful, I'm an overthinker. I might have a little obsessive compulsiveness. Those could be little attributes that you carry forward, but that's just your attributes. That's not what you've done, right? It doesn't mean that I was a painter 5 lifetimes ago. I'm still a painter right now, but I could use painting in some other way. Maybe I use it as like a hobby or whatever. When you come back to justice, I don't think somebody who's a criminal right now necessarily was a criminal in their past lives.
Okay, interesting.
I think that if they're a criminal right now, they're a criminal right now. I don't think it has anything to do with the past life. Again, you tapped upon Akashic records or astrology. I don't think anybody looking at your astrological chart is going to say that you were a deviant or you were bad from a past life. I don't think they can
Sure.
tell you that. They can tell you characteristics that could happen with you in this life and what's going on. That's what they can tell you. But I don't think they can define that this is what you've done so many years ago. Now, when you look at Akashic records are basically the same thing as astrology, but it's saying that they're in the stars, and a lot of people can read these stars for you because they have that ability. Most people say that I tap into the Akashic records. Do I tap into the Akashic records? I have no clue if I do. But a lot of people, when they do a reading with me, say, hey, it seems like you're tapping into the Akashic records when you're speaking to me. I said, okay, I mean, if you feel that way, but all I'm doing is channeling, or whatever I'm channeling and telling you is coming from whatever I can sense and I can feel and intuitively. When it comes to the justice system and it comes to legalities, I do believe in two things: that you are playing a role of God if you're the judge, right? And everybody in that courtroom also plays different, let's just say they play different characters from the universe. Somebody might be a little like Saturn, somebody might be like Jupiter, somebody might be like Neptune. Like it has that kind of information in that room again. And when we look at from an astrological chart point of view too, that probably when we're looking at a court case, you can define certain areas in a chart for a person through that court case. But that could also just mean it's again attributes. Every house has a whole bunch of good and bad attributes. So if we feel like somebody is a criminal, we will look at the negative attributes of that house or that sign or that planet. We won't look at the positive side of it. But if that person was a saint, then we would be like, oh, well, yes, listen, this is the good attributes of these areas. I can tell you
Sure.
this because I've gone through this scenario, not legally, but when I did an astrological reading with somebody who wanted to read my chart, they had read my chart and they had told me that the last 4 years was horrendous. And I was sitting there with my friends, and it was one of my friends, astrologer, and then I didn't have to say anything. My friend's like, actually, he's had a great life for the last 4 years, and he's made a ton of money. Then the person who was reading it went back and said, oh, well, yes, okay. Well, you know,
Yeah.
Mars is sitting here with this, and that's why, yeah, okay, now I can understand. And I'm like thinking, that's not what you just said 5 minutes ago. So
Sure.
now you took the negative aspect of it, and why was it negative? I'll give you the reason. The negative, why was it negative is because of my age, and I'm not married, and I don't have kids, and I'm not earning the way I should be earning, which is conventional earning. That's why it
Mm,
became negative. Does that make
mm,
sense? And uh, then they took this negative aspect of it. The other thing is when you're reading my chart, if you're a good astrological person, you can tell me certain characteristics of myself. and that will be bang on, bang on. Like you'll tell me that I'm psychic. You'll tell me that I might have a problem with my leg. You might tell me I have a problem with maybe education in the sense like I have dyslexia. So you may be able to tell that. And I know a lot of good astrologers can do that. But majority of astrologers will say that, you've got these type of problems and they've been carried on from other lifetimes, and that's why. So even when you're in a court case, if you were sitting with an astrologer, the astrologer probably will give you fundamentals about what's going on with each person. But again, remember, there's a yin and a yang to everything.
Sure.
There's a good, there's
Sure.
a bad to everything. So, sorry, it was a very long-winded answer to your question.
No, it's okay. I'm curious to know, have you ever sat on a jury before?
Never.
Would you be inclined, so with your psychic abilities, if you were to sit as a jury member, how do you imagine that going? Like, do you imagine that you would probably be receiving downloads as the trial is going on? Like, can you turn it off? Like, how do you think this would work?
So my psychic ability is only one-on-one when I'm sitting with somebody. It's not
Oh,
something that is going to be there even when I'm doing a talk with like 200 people or 100 people. I do not open my psychic ability for one reason. I would get so much information coming in from so many different people. Again, in the courtroom, I'd get information from that person, the judge, the person who's sitting next to me. How do I differentiate that that's only your information? I can't. No one can. But if I was alone with you one on one, yes, I can. That's why even when I'm talking to clients, I usually tell them not more than two people because it gets a little too muddled. So when I'm speaking to two people, I will download, I'll talk about things, and then they're saying, "Oh yeah, yeah, that's me," or "That's me." Does that make sense? But if I was in a courtroom, I would never use this ability in a courtroom, and I don't use this ability in my daily life at all. So if you met me on the street, there's no way I'm going to hold your hand and be like, "My love, blah blah blah." I'm not doing that. I will never do that, and it's an invasion of privacy. I will not. I will not open myself to read anybody in an open forum ever in my life, and I will never do that. Even if I was in a court case and a judge asked me as a psychic to help them, I'd say, sure, I'd do that, but I would go do that in the private chambers and not in the courtroom, or I'd ask everybody to leave the courtroom, only have the judge and that person there, and that's it. No lawyers. And then have that conversation. If I had to do that.
have you ever been consulted to like solve a crime or anything like that?
I've been consulted. So I had this one client who came in and she did a reading with me, and she's very happy with the reading. And I looked at her, I said, "You're not satisfied." She goes, "What do you mean?" I said, you have something you want to talk about and you're not talking to me about it." And she didn't speak about that. She spoke about work, she spoke about love, when she's getting married, when a kid's gonna happen, all that stuff. I said, "I'm gonna tell you this once, and I'm gonna tell you that you can't do anything about it. So if you want me to tell you what I have to tell you, then you're gonna listen." Then she said, "Sure." I said, he was walking in the woods, and this couple took a boulder from the floor and they smashed his skull from the back. He fell face down in the woods. They've gone and ran away with all the money. They were working with him as his partner, and he's dead. He's not there anymore. And these two have run off and you'll never find them again. She's bawling at this time. And she starts speaking when she had the courage, and she said, "We found my uncle in the woods and we don't know what happened to him." And yes, he did have a male and female partner in his firm. So I helped her understand how he got there.
Well, that's so interesting to me because then, and this is, where the intersection of law and spirituality becomes very interesting to me because, like, let's just say for the sake of argument that that lady now is, in court as like, I don't know, whatever, maybe like a witness or something, or is there to testify about her uncle's death. How does like it's interesting because it's like if you have spiritual gifts or you find out information through spiritual means, those are not generally accepted forms of evidence in court, and that's the thing that's like so interesting to me, because it's like the level of specificity that you just gave is the kind of level of specificity that could, solve really complex crimes, for example. But it's like, I imagine that if a judge is just like, okay, well, where did you obtain this evidence? What is the person going to say? Oh, like I received a download about
My
it, or like
psychic.
I talked to a psychic about it. Like, unfortunately, that's where I struggle with the legal system because, this is probably another topic, but as I was observing the legal system, I'm like, wow, like the legal system, in my view, is in like it's so deep in the shadow masculine in the sense of like there's a lot of control. There's also a lot of emphasis on logic and reason that there's almost no room for the other side of the spectrum, which is intuition or spiritual abilities or spiritual kind of evidence. Like I myself, I come from like a family of dreamers. So like there's six of us, and out of the six, four are dreamers, and they're really spot on with their dreams. Like I mean, it's a family where you can't hide anything. If you're pregnant, someone will know. If I don't know, if you've moved to a different country, someone will know. I tried to throw a surprise party once. That was a bust. My sister dreamt about it 3 days before. And so I imagine, if I was one of the dreamers, for example, and I was a lawyer or I was a plaintiff, that showing up to court and giving these kinds of pieces of information is not going to be accepted. And I think that's why I struggle within very Western forms of what the legal system accepts as evidence. Because what you just said is exactly the kind of thing I imagine lots of people go through, but it's not admissible in court.
It isn't. That's why you need to give like evidence. It's like when people are going through legal cases and they are going through property cases or cases with family members, I do help them in those cases.
Mm.
I do tell them that, you need to find this paperwork, it's with these people or it's here. Or I will
Interesting.
tell them that legally what they need to do without knowing the legal system. By the
Mm.
way, I had one client who was going through a divorce, and they're saying that their partner is not going to give them anything. And I said, hold on. And they said, how long do I have to hold on? I said, you're going to get all of this. And I described everything they're going to get. I said, hold on and do not mediate and come to terms right now. It took 5 years for them to go through that case, but the person got everything that they needed to get. Exactly what I told them. Do they now live in that hope of making sure that they're going to be able to get what I told them? Not necessarily, because not a lot of people can work for 5 years in a legal case and pay those lawyer fees to make that case happen. But this individual had the means to make sure that they held on as long as they could, and
Yeah.
they changed multiple lawyers because the lawyers were not in the same vibration that they were in. And this is a person who's highly spiritual and religious, and each lawyer that this individual was going to kept on. There's this side of there's a very I mean, you've got your rules and you have your way of doing things, right? When a client's looking at things holistically, it's hard for a lawyer to say, yeah, okay, just because you're sensing that you can get better doesn't mean you're going to get better. Let's just get it over and done with, right? But if I have faith that something is going to come over, the other thing is, this is what I told this individual. This individual is somebody who goes to an astrologer, a tarot card reader, a
All
face
sorts.
reader, a palmist, you name it, goes to every single thing. And out of all of the people, maybe three of us kind of said something similar, so they had the faith to go forward with it. which is fine.
Mm.
I mean, that's their way of doing things. But yeah, when it comes to solving a case, I would say that maybe a few lawyers and a few police officers would probably use somebody with outside skills to help them solve things if they don't understand it. And that's their faith. And they probably won't tell the other person. They won't tell their lawyer how they got the information, or they won't because they just, this is something that came on my desk, and this is, they're not going to say, oh, well, I went to my reader or my holistic healer and they kind of had an intuition. They will not. My aspect of looking at the occult is something that is more secretive for majority of people than projected outwards and saying, hey, this is the way we looked at it. It's just like when we look at medicine, right? You can go the allopathic way, or you could go the homeopathic, or you could go whichever way you want to go. But it's not necessarily to just go through conventional medicine. What we've learned over the years is that sometimes you have to look at a more natural way of healing yourself. And that's the way everybody's going towards this natural, spiritual way of looking at things. Now, when you come to the justice system, I don't think because there's so many parameters and boxes that you have to live in within the justice system that the area of gray does not exist. It's either black or white. We have to come to a place of black or white. Whereas when you're speaking to somebody of the ability that is within the occult or tantric or has a different way of looking at things, we are in the gray.
Yeah.
Because it's not something where we have any form of evidence to say that what I do is correct. You can't explain it. But if I have to do it from a scientific point of view, the reason why anybody can do what I do is because we're at a place of silence where nothing's bothering us and we can get all this information that's coming into us because we can see things clearly. It's almost like when you read a book, there's a subtext to the information you're reading, right? Even if it says whatever the story's saying, there's another layer of information that's coming to a person that they need to interpret on their own, that what the true meaning of this was. So we probably look at a different meaning than everybody else, and especially when you're coming to a court case, the way we look at it is different. And I do think that there's been multiple cases where a lot of people found information through somebody like a medium or somebody who's psychic to help them. I think there's also a TV show that was created based on a medium that was helping people legally and in solving cases, and it's based on a true scenario.
Mm. Yeah, I mean that sounds like a viable show idea. I don't think I know what the show is, but that sounds like something I've
I think it,
probably seen on
I
TV
think
at
it's
some
called,
point.
I think it's called Medium.
Oh,
Yeah,
that sounds plausible. Yeah. Okay.
yeah.
Interesting. This is also interesting to me. Do you imagine that? Because I know you said earlier that for you, with your psychic abilities, you would never really turn it on within a courtroom, for example. Hypothetically speaking, if you were a lawyer and you were in your office and you were doing a one-on-one with your client, do you think you would ever be tempted to use it as you chat with your
I
client?
would, I would, I would tell my client and then use it. I wouldn't just use it without telling my client. So even
Mm,
when you're sitting with me, you know you're coming to me as a psychic. And you know that I know things that most people don't know. And a lot of clients leave me and they're like, Dan, you know something and you're not telling me, but you know the answer. And I was like, yeah, but I need you to find that answer. I'm not going to play with your destiny. I need you to
sure.
also go through what you need to go through to be where you are. Where I can help you and save you and correct you, I will do it. But I am not going to alter what's going, like a lot of people say, do I not get information? I get information about myself too, just as flashes, but I live through it. If I know I'm going to get in an accident, I go through that accident.
Hmm.
There's been times that I know I'm going to hurt my leg or I'm going to fall, I still go through it. I still allow that to happen. I don't save myself from it. Does that make sense?
Why?
I kind of say, well, I believe that the premonition I get for myself is just a warning that it's going to happen. So I should just be aware of it so it doesn't shake me up as much once it happens. And what happens is once it happens, I usually laugh at myself. And I don't go the other way of, oh my God, this happened to me. And I get into a frantic mode. I go into
Mhm.
more, I look at myself more humorously. Like, majority of the time, I look at myself as Tom and Jerry, the cartoon. I was
Mhm.
like, I'm such a cartoon. This is happening to me. I saw it was going to happen. I didn't stop myself and it still happened. But I allow myself to go through it. It just, I don't believe in changing my path. I want
Mm.
to, I've learned to become a little bit more solution mind where I'm not going to overthink or analyze. And even if I get to a place of that frustration or overthinking or overwhelmness, I know
Right.
who I can reach out to help me.
Mm. You have a refreshingly optimistic view on, a lot of this subject matter, whether it's reincarnation or karma, which is really nice because like I've been in like isolation for the last couple of months, and when I think about these topics, I have a very fatalistic view of just like, oh, like I don't know, like because I guess I'm so muddled in the mainstream conversations of like not even mainstream, but like maybe the typical immigrant kind of conversation of like, oh, this is a generational curse or this is, a generational trauma that, and so when you hear so much language around, oh, like, you know, uh, divorce is a generational curse that runs in my family. That's why I start thinking of what it means to now, pass down life sentences because I've been in environments that suggest that certain things you can't control and they come from your bloodline, for example, or that the tongue holds so much power that when you make these declarations, like you will be condemned across multiple lifetimes, that someone is cursing you and your future bloodlines, et cetera, et cetera. So it's been really refreshing to kind of have this conversation with you, hear your kind of view on these things.
Well, I don't try to make it positive or negative.
Sure.
I'm just saying a fact. To me, it's a fact. It's not something that it's wishful thinking. It's a fact to me. I have blind faith in the way I think. I have blind faith in the way that I perceive information also. I don't second guess it. I also don't allow anybody else's noise to interrupt my frequency. So when we speak about generational divorces that have happened, so maybe your parents are divorced, your grandparents are divorced, their parents are divorced, there's something which we kind of say that is tradition, and we've created this as a tradition, and we've decided to make it a tradition. This is a decision of your own. When I speak to clients who are going through a divorce also, and if they have kids, I usually say to them that the only reason why you were with this person was to make sure that this human came out and is going to be the best version of the both of you. Now, that's up to the both of you to create this vision of saying, hey, this is going to be somebody that we're going to nurture, or is this somebody that we're also going to program? So now, while you were growing up, or when you're, if we look at generational, there must have been programming that happened from the family member already, right? Your parents would have programmed that information of divorce already in you. Your grandparents would have programmed that information of divorce. But if they had gotten divorced, didn't say anything, had a happy life with other partners, and it was part there, and they just had a loving relationship for the rest of their life with somebody else or with themselves, it wouldn't have been a tradition in your family, or it wouldn't be something that is a pattern in generations in your family. When I look at my family, My parents are immigrants. My father was an immigrant from India. My mother was an immigrant from Guyana. Two different cultures, very two different. Guyana's in South America. They're a little bit more vivacious, a little bit more sexual. My father's North Indian, very traditional, very strict, very like,
Sure.
doesn't do is not flamboyant as my mother's side of the family, which is very flamboyant. But my parents, when they got married, they married because of love. My parents were intimate till my father died at 57. They were still very intimate with each other, very loving, very passionate with each other. And then post that, my mom never remarried or anything. She lives now in the love of my father still. She lives in his love. That's how she lives. And when I look at that, I'm not married. I don't have kids. I don't have a conventional lifestyle. Did I carry on the tradition of my parents when it comes to partnership? Not at all. But I did carry forward love. So because I carried forward love, my life is based on love. My life isn't based on being together, not being together. So my tradition or the way that I'm looking at things is different. My sister and her husband have a great loving relationship. My brother and his wife have a great loving relationship. They all have their kids. It's amazing. They had that. And I see sparks of my parents' relationships in their relationships. But do I see 100% of what my parents' love relationship is with my sister and her husband or my brother and his wife? Not at all. Not at all. I don't. If I want to force fit it and say that they are, then I could. But do I think my parent, brother and sister are carrying the tradition of my parents? I don't know. I don't know if that's something that is part of that. I'm not force fitting that. Right.
Hmm.
But if anybody gets divorced, does that mean because my parents got divorced? Well, the other thing is that we could have carried forward a vibration of that information that was just, kind of programmed into us that this is going to happen to you. So we keep that in the back of our head. So whenever we get in a relationship, we know it's never going to work out. So then we go to the next relationship. So then we keep that forward. What we need to do is say, hey, let me clear myself of any programming that anyone has done. Forget about my family. And then allow love to come into my life the way that I've never felt it or seen it before. And then let me work from there. Let me work on us. Not me look at what I already have and what my life has gone through and what my family has gone through and what my grandparents have gone through and what that history is just information. It does not dictate your life. You allow it to dictate your life because you decide that it must dictate. It should just be information. It shouldn't be the truth. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's essentially, or correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like you have a very kind of, I mean, I don't think this is a real term, but I feel like the vibe I'm getting from what you're saying is that we have the power to construct our own reality and destiny and not necessarily carry forward the past traumas that maybe people in our bloodline have experienced or that we allegedly may have experienced in a past life. Is that a fair estimate of what you're really saying?
Yes, that's a fair estimate of what I'm saying because if I look back to my mother's family, they came over to the West Indies or South America as indentured servitude, which is after slavery. This was the other form of slavery, and the British or whoever took them across from India all the way to South America to work on the plantations.
Hmm.
Am I holding that within me right now? No, I don't see that anywhere. Unless unless I kind of force fit it in the way that my best friend's British bulldog behaves with me, or how my nephews behave with me and they bully me and they make me do everything they want. then I could say, oh yes, this is a part of my generational trauma from when my, I mean, I could force fit it. I could totally force fit it. I could do that. But if you're asking me consciously, spiritually, emotionally, mentally,
Mm.
and religiously, if that what pertains to me, no, not at all. It doesn't.
I can see why you're a psychic healer because I feel like there's a really strong message of liberation in what you just said because you're basically telling people that you don't have to be condemned to a life of XYZ and the third based off of what your ancestors or even your immediate family like your parents have experienced, and I think that's something that not a lot of people are consciously aware of. Like I just put out a video on TikTok recently where I was just kind of like I was talking about absolutism and how a lot of people they think that the law is absolute because I was talking to this guy once and he's like, "Oh, I can't do XYZ in the third because it's against the law." It was something really small, but I was just like that's not necessarily true and I was focusing on the absolute kind of view that he had of like, oh, I can't do this because this is against the law. And I'm like, you technically have free will to do whatever it is that you want. Like the law can't control your behavior any more than a parent can control the behavior of a child. And how once you start realizing that the law in many respects is just a suggestion and not something that can literally control people's behavior, that the whole universe will then open up to you. All of a sudden, job requirements are no longer a requirement. So if it says something like, oh, you need X, Y, Z in the third, you're going to apply anyway. There are very few things in this life that are absolute, and that requirement is not the same way the law is not in the same way that recipe that says this is how it needs to be done and these are the ingredients that you need to use is also not absolute. And he's like, oh, I never thought of it that way. And it's just kind of like, yeah, there's people have more power than they might actually think, and I think that's a really important message to disseminate to people.
Correct. I mean, even when you look at coming back to the legal system, you have parameters you have to work in. But can judgment change? Can ideology change? Can you rewrite the way they look at things? And if you can show your proof and evidence in a way that nobody can question it, then nobody can question it. There's no way of questioning it, right? If it is what it is, if you have a videotape of me painting a wall white, right, and I come in with a white paint stripe on me because you just took me from there and you're showing me the evidence that I painted it white, and I
Mm-hmm.
said, well, no, I was never painting anywhere, and I have paint on me, and there's a video of me with my face with the paintbrush painting on the wall. I cannot change that, right? I can tell
Mm-hmm.
you something completely different. And you, as a lawyer, can say, and if you're defending me, can say, I'm sorry, he actually has a mental health issue. And then you prove it, and I go through tests, and that my reality was that I wasn't painting. And that was just my split personality that was painting. And we prove that through medicine, and we prove that, then great. What I was also saying was true then at that point too, that I was not painting because that was another version of me painting, but that's not what my consciousness believes in. But that we can prove that. We can literally prove that. We can prove that legally, we can prove that through medicine, mental health, we can prove that. You can prove that. So there there is there is this there's truth to the law, there's also manipulation to the law. And a lot of people
Oh,
manipulate it in such a way that it works for their benefit. And the person that is the judge or the God, if they care, they won't get manipulated. And if it was just a job for them, they don't care. They're just giving out sentencing and saying, yeah, it's okay, let's go. You have to also remember that the legal system, depending where you are, has so many cases, and that judge must be seeing maybe 20 cases a day. Who knows, right? Even if it's in small claims or whatever, it's hard for them to now sit there and be at their best version of the. They have to just go through what the checklist is. And that's all they're doing. They're just going through the checklist. Do I blame them? No, because that's what the job requires. The system has to change. There has to be less cases given to a judge so the judge can actually sit there and be with it and understand it instead of just saying, this is a checklist, right?
Mhm.
So, will a judge sit there and think holistically and spiritually and meditate before he takes a judgment? No, I don't think so. He has to be practical, he has to be pragmatic. He has to look at it and say, hey, my call is not a gut feeling call.
Mhm.
It's what I can relate to and I can see, right?
Mhm.
Is the court looking at consciousness? Is the court looking at, they're not, but they're at least coming to another level of saying, hey, mental health is very important. Let's look at the mental health of a person too now. So when we look at mental health of a person, a lot of things change, right?
Mhm.
Then we need to think about, well, if I rehabilitate this person and make sure that they're in a better mind frame, they will never go through this again. We're hoping that never happens, that they don't fall off the wagon again. But if they change, then they change, then they're not a nuisance to the society anymore, right? But if I've got 4 life sentences and you still haven't checked my mental health, like when we spoke about he must have massive mental health issues. Where does it stem from? Is it generational? Did he grow up in an abusive family? Do you get what I'm saying? Was this a tradition that was carried forward? Is this something he saw? Somebody within his family was doing it with somebody else and then he picked it up and then he did it, right? We don't know this. But again, is it now the judge will sit there and say, well, okay, you know, I empathize with you. I definitely empathize with you, but you committed the crime. And you need to. Now we've got people who are their loved ones sitting there and they need justice. Nobody's going to sit there and say, boo hoo, you had a bad life growing up and this is what happened with your father and whatever, whatever, whatever. They're not sitting there listening to that. They want they want justice, as you said. They want somebody to be judged and say, hey, this person has to be taken care of. Does that make things better for them? No, it doesn't make things better for them. A loved one's gone. I can never
Mhm.
change that. I can never fix that. That loved one's gone. Feel bad for all the victims' families because they're left with this emptiness that was taken from them. And was it destined for their family members to go through that? I doubt that was their destiny. It was something that was taken from them, right? So again, karma comes back into play, right? Did this person get karma for all their bad deeds and stuff like that? I guess if we have to go back to what your first statement was, yes, karma or justice was served, right? Do I want to analyze and find out why this guy has done that? No. If I was one of the family member, I don't care what he did, or how he came to that point. I care about he took away something from me. I want justice. How do I get that justice? Some people get maybe him going to 4 life sentences is good enough for them. I don't know. That might not be good enough for a lot of people. They need a lot more than that. How do we value that now? We don't. That's why, again, you've got the justice system and you have somebody who is playing God, who decides that, right? And there's a lot of cases that are out there that don't get solved. And those people, poor people are still sitting there because the whole system gets manipulated. And you tell a story, and it's the one who tells the better story who wins.
Mhm.
I mean, that's the
Wow.
way I see it.
Well, as someone who's been watching trials, you're spot on with that. Thank you so much, Dinesh, for having our episode conversation on karma, justice, and reincarnation. That concludes episode 1.